back in 2020, we met this guy named Craig Evans, or I met this guy, found out he'd had sort of a long-standing relationship with Sandals Church all the way back to like 2016, 2017, where he and his son had started playing Clash of Clans and discovered through their digital spaces someone else that had gone to Sandals Church, recommended it, and Craig was interested, started watching Sandals Church from that time, got a lot more involved, eventually took a trip with our church to Israel a couple years after that. And then in 2020, when COVID happened and we launched Sandals Church Anywhere, the Evans family was one of the first families that was interested in exploring that option. And over the course of the last 3 years, have just been in contact with them, discovering more about them as much as we could in a digital connection. And the reason we went to Australia was to get to know them better, was to care for them, connect with them, fuel them to just keep doing what they're doing. We made a lot of discoveries while we were out there, and we got to bring a lot of different people. Really, each person that came on this trip from Sandals was there for a different reason, different motivation, and had a different role. But it was exciting to see it come together in order to serve and love this family.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like the morning of the church service, we walk into the Evans home. And as you walk into their home, you immediately see this beautiful deck that overlooks their yard. It overlooks like the forest in Australia. It's a beautiful time of year. Everything's green. They've got a bird out on the patio. It's like this kind of enchanted experience. And they have this wonderful table set up out on their deck. They're there. They're cooking. They're making coffee. Their friends, Tom and Sue, are there. Tom's on the grill. He's grilling food. And it was just this incredible inviting experience into their home and their life. And it was like instantly comfortable and natural. We walk into this experience. We have this wonderful meal together out on the deck, this beautiful setting. Everyone's laughing and talking. Then we got to transition into the actual church service time. And to sit with that group of people, listening to just a small group worship together and sing together, watching the experience unfold for them, having Fredo lead us through communion together, all of it was so beautiful. And then I remember near the end, there was almost this a little bit of an unprompted debrief from Rachel's friend Sue. And she made a comment. She said, this is not just content for us. And it was like our team from the States, it immediately hit something in the room for us. I could tell, because she, without even knowing it, she spoke to an insecurity that exists at times for each of us, which is a little bit of are we just making content that people scroll through? Does it make a difference? We all deal with that a little bit in our lives. Does what I do make a difference? But in this unique environment where we spend so much of our time ministering from afar, we can end up in that place where it's like, is it just content? And she answered that for us like in a second. For them, it's not. It's church, it's community, it's relationship. It's not just content for us, 5 or 6 words. And that was probably the kind of culminating moment for us in that experience.
Levitating, he was glowing, and he heard the voice of...
Just the Evans story of how they found Sandals Church, the small things that they do that are ordinary, everyday things to create an environment of hospitality, a demonstration of God's care. I felt like that's what was like clear and upfront. And then I recently heard someone talk about how they feel like the next movement of God is a holy and a quiet one. And I feel like people receiving church in somewhat of a digital, but also in-person kind of hybrid mix is like a holy and quiet movement, you know. We produce stuff, which is still weird to say as a church, right? But we create content for people, and oftentimes they receive it in kind of a quiet moment, like maybe like a dark moment, sometimes like middle of the night moment. And so I felt like God was saying, be more aware of the holy and the quiet moments and the small ways that I'm just at work doing things that are great. Because we come from an environment where things are big, bright, large, a lot of things planned for, right? And so we tend to think, oh, God's very active here, like how exciting this is, versus some of the smaller ways that are like everyday things that God still cares about and involved in. So, yeah.
Most impactful for me was Fredo and I. We bought some shoes for Lucas. He's a hooper like Fredo and I, and so we immediately connected over that and talking basketball. And so we had the really cool opportunity to buy him a pair of basketball shoes out here and bring him out to Lucas. Now, he had no reaction when we showed him. I think he cracked half a smile. So we were both like, okay, does he actually like them, or did we just totally miss on this one? But his mom, Rachel, told us that like at the end of that night, he was just sitting and like holding his shoes and was so like in shock that we would do something like that for him and be able to serve him in that way. And then even Craig, a week later sent us a video of him hooping in them, and they just look so good and so clean. So that was a really impactful moment for me, because it was an opportunity for us to show Lucas, who's 14, still figuring this stuff out, of like, hey, your church might be really, really far away physically, but we're here for you and we care about you and want to love on you the same way that God loves you. So.
Kind of maybe what we have grown to know church to be, being willing to in our own hearts and minds, like expand that idea, because the presence of God was real in that room, yet it looked nothing like probably the church versions that you and I encounter like on a week-to-week basis. And so I think being willing to learn and being willing to allow our definition of church and the church gathering be radically transformed for God to do something new, and something that we cannot create in our own, like with our own hands and our own ideas. Yeah.
I think whatever your expression of church is, like whatever your expression of worship is, I think that's important. I think it's important to worship. It's important to worship with others. But that can be so different, and that's okay. I don't think that we need to like program everything to look the same, to be the same. Even in America, I don't think we need to do that. But the relationships you have, I think, are where some of those really kind of key moments happen. I think that other people, when I think about my life and I think about the things that have been maybe the most challenging and or the most rewarding, I think that those have always been part of relationships with other people. I think your faith and your relationship with Jesus is exactly the same thing. Your relationships with other people are what draw that out, make it deeper, richer, help you get through the really hard times or make the good times even sweeter. And so maybe it's just a renewal of that I think sometimes in the big American church, we just get caught up in what's happening on the weekend, what's happening at the weekend service. And that is super important. Corporate worship, super important. But how are we fueling people's relationship with others, especially in contexts where you can't corporately worship, I think is really interesting to think about and focus on and work on. And just something that I think was a good reminder for us in a different space, in a different context.
All right.
I think Sandals Church can fuel the momentum of discipleship, and that can be a way that we serve others in different contexts. The more we learn people, the more we seek them out, the more we receive, the more we go out, the more we meet, the more we can hear people in their context and learn where we can step into those gaps. I think where we were able to step into the gap that the Evans family had may look different from the next family that we meet or the next place that we are able to visit. But I think if we are intentional about getting to know them, about listening to them, and about stepping in at the right time, I think there's a lot of opportunity there.